Hello and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into a theological perspective that completely reframes one of the most pivotal events in human history. The idea is this: what if the crucifixion wasn't a tragedy, but was actually the meticulously planned final act of a story that was written before the world even began?
So that really is the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? Was this whole event just a tragic outcome of human politics and betrayal? Or was it the final scene of a divinely written script, where every single person involved was playing their part perfectly, whether they had any idea or not?
All right, so the core argument here is that the cross was absolutely predestined. This text argues that figures we all know, like Herod and Pontius Pilate, the crowds, the religious leaders, they weren't just random people making chaotic choices. No, they were actually instruments, unknowingly carrying out a very specific plan that God had decided on long before.
And this verse, right here from the book of Acts, is really the bedrock of the entire argument. The source material points to this to say, look, the things that happened weren't accidents. It's suggesting that they were the fulfillment of a divine will that was already set in stone. I mean, that's a pretty mind-bending idea, right? That every human choice was just one thread in this massive, pre-woven divine tapestry?
Now, for a plan this huge to work, you'd need a willing participant. And that's where this key theological idea comes in: the second person of the Trinity, God the Son. The source makes it crystal clear that this wasn't something forced on Jesus. It was a plan he willingly and voluntarily took on, all as part of a single, unified purpose with God the Father.
But this is where the whole concept just gets bigger, way bigger. The source argues this wasn't a plan made just before Jesus was born, or even before ancient Israel. No, this plan was put in place before time itself even started ticking. So let's really dig into what that implies.
The text uses this passage from 1 Corinthians as Exhibit A for what it calls a divine blueprint. It talks about this hidden wisdom, this secret plan that God set up for our ultimate glory before the ages even began. And according to this viewpoint, the crucifixion wasn't just part of the plan, it was the master key designed to unlock the entire thing.
Just stop and think about that for a second. The story we usually hear is that the cross was a reaction, right? A divine rescue mission after humanity fell. But this interpretation completely flips that on its head. It says the cross wasn't plan B. It was the finish line from the very moment creation started. The end was literally built into the beginning.
So, of course, this brings up a massive question. What about free will? I mean, if the ending was already written, were people like Pilate just puppets on a string? How does the text square individual human choices with this seemingly unstoppable divine plan?
And what's so fascinating is how the source material handles this. It doesn't actually see these two things as being in conflict. The argument is that free will wasn't canceled out, it was woven into the design. Pilate's political fear, the leader's jealousy, the crowd's anger, those were all very real, very human motivations that, when put together, just happened to produce the exact predetermined result.
And this whole idea gets even more weight when you look at Jesus' own words. Remember, he said he could have called down legions of angels to save himself, but he didn't. Why? Well, because doing so would have broken the script. For the divine blueprint to work, everything had to play out exactly as the scripture said it would. The plan was everything.
Okay, so if this was all a super intricate cosmic plan, the next logical question has to be, why? What was the point of it all? Well, the source text doesn't leave us hanging. It lays out not one, not two, but 11 specific reasons this predestined event had to happen. Let's break them down.
That's right. The text actually identifies 11 distinct core purposes that the cross was designed to achieve. And these reasons, they range from the deeply personal and relational all the way to the vast and cosmic. They really cover the entire scope of creation.
So, this first batch of reasons is all about revelation, about putting things on display for the whole universe to see. According to the source, the cross was the ultimate stage. It was meant to prove God's fundamental character, to show his glory like never before, to demonstrate a love that would literally embrace death, and to satisfy a perfect justice that couldn't just sweep wrongdoing under the rug. It was basically a cosmic press conference about who God is.
Now, the second set of purposes gets into some heavy-duty cosmic action. The cross wasn't just to save people from that point forward. It was designed to reach all the way back in time to the very first Adam. It was also meant to provide the basis for judging sin and, get this, to eventually eliminate it from time and space entirely. The sheer scale here is just staggering. It even includes completing the purpose of free will and allowing God the Son as a human to inherit God's name.
But out of all 11 of those incredible reasons, the source saves the most profound one for last. This is the one it presents as the capstone, the final piece that holds the entire structure together and unifies all the other goals.
So here's the bottom line. The text argues that the crucifixion was not a repair job for a broken world. It was the planned, final, necessary act that brought God's entire creative project to its perfect intended end. In this view, the cross was the moment that creation was finally complete.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If we go with the premise of this source, that the end of the story was already written on page 1, how does that change how we see the whole narrative? What does that really say about purpose, about destiny, and about the nature of the story that we all find ourselves living in?